Welcome to New Zealand, the home of the current Rugby World Champions, whose love for the not-so-round ball game is borderline religious.
Rugby is just completely dominant.
Rugby and New Zealand are essentially the same thing.
It's a sort of social interaction for a lot of people.
If you're a person in this country who doesn't like rugby, you have a really tough time.
Yet amongst all of this is one of world football's most interesting stories, the Wellington Phoenix, this country and confederation's only professional football club, who face a unique predicament which may see them lose everything.
It'd be disastrous. It's not just for the city, it'd be disastrous for football in the country.
If they do go, that'll set back New Zealand football 20 years.
To be honest, I think football would die.
From Monaco playing in League to Toronto playing in MLS, the notion of a club playing in a separate national league is nothing new, but the Phoenix, well, they take things to a completely different level, playing in a separate league that's not even in their confederation.
Is anyone else doing that around the world?
No, it's unique. We are unique. And because of the very reason you raised before, is that there is no other channel.
You see, with a population of only 4 million, New Zealand's never really been big enough to sustain anything other than amateur league football. So for almost 2 decades now, it's been Australia offering the option for the game to be played professionally. What was the deal before the Knicks?
We had the Football Kings and then New Zealand Knights.
Tell me about the Football Kings. How'd they go?
They weren't too bad actually. Quite a lot of the coaches and things around New Zealand football now play for the Football Kings 10 years ago.
In the Kings days, it was run out of a little office with maybe 2 or 3 staff that pretty much had to do everything, you know.
So the Kings folded because the NSL finished up and the ATIC took over, so that was why the Kings failed. I think if the NSL had to continue, the Kings
And there
would
were
have
some pretty bad crowds and results for the Kings as well.
Yeah, but compared to the Knights, the Kings did really well. The Knights were the ones who really screwed it up.
The Knights had their licence pulled for being just generally horrid.
They just didn't have the players to do it. They had a coach who wasn't great.
I think the key one was Auckland had the first 2 teams, and it's a big city. It doesn't feel like there's just a spirit to support one entity.
After the Knights and the Kings, it'd be understandable to think that New Zealand football wouldn't be given another chance with a professional club, but they were. And from the moment the Wellington Phoenix came along in 2007, with a dedicated owner and fan base, things went differently.
They put out word, was there anybody interested in financially supporting a Wellington-based club?
A guy named Terry Seraspisos. He decided, as he was sitting at the hairdressers and heard on the radio that they were looking for someone to take over a club in New Zealand somewhere, he decided, I'm going to do that. All of a sudden, there was an A-League team coming to Wellington. First ever game that we played, I think there was a massive crowd of 15,000, which was unheard of for rugby or football at the time. From that point on, you just knew that Wellington should always have had the A-League here, and it's fantastic that it is here.
Steps up and wins it for the Phoenix.
9 years strong, you'd think all focus would be on next year's decade celebrations for the club. However, no, because as things stand, despite all this support, despite all the club's accomplishments, there'll be no Wellington Phoenix in 2017.
We were after a 10-year extension to our licence, which is due to end at the end of the season, 2015-16. We wanted 10 more years for reasons like getting sponsorship buy-in, funding the academy system, things that wouldn't be worthwhile if we didn't have a 10-year licence. The FFA said, no, we're not going to give you 10 years.
The decision's just stupid. It makes no sense for anyone to chop the Phoenix.
In our current club participation agreement, it says we can have almost an automatic extension for another 4 years.
You rejected that. You said you don't want to go for that.
We can't make it work.
Yeah, got a lot of phone calls that night, obviously being the captain, from a lot of the players, with a lot of, do I know any more about this? And I didn't have answers.
It then became almost like a Mexican standoff, and we were saying, well, we're not going to take 4, and the FA saying, well, we're not going to give you 10.
I think the previous New Zealand sides have had ownership issues and money issues, and that's not the issue here. The issue is with the FFA and what they want out of New Zealand.
The FFA wants to grow the A-League, and they want to see these metrics, their metrics that they measure themselves against other codes in Australia, continue to improve. The ones that most often talk about is viewership on Fox, and average attendances. The issue with viewership on Fox is, of course, all our supporters are watching on Sky TV in New Zealand, so they don't count when people are watching it on Fox. We've now got to a stage where we've worked through a number of those issues. To be honest with you, I didn't think it was going to take this long. I really thought we'd have it done before Christmas.
There are some in the media who do feel that the FFA do have valid arguments in their reasoning.
The FFA is telling them that it's actually not good enough to just simply pay your players on time and get slightly better attendances. You actually have to try and be one of the best clubs. You have to spend money on marquee players. You have to really try and make a name for yourselves. Now, if you do look at the argument of the Mariners and the Jets, the FFA, what they're saying is that at least they develop Australian players. But Wellington Phoenix don't contribute to that. So if you look at what their costs are, the FFA is feeling that they can't justify that for minimal reward for Australian players. And I personally would love to see Wellington Phoenix stay in there, but I think it's very hard to justify when the game is short on cash. And a lot of areas of Australian football, going down to grassroots level, are suffering because of that, the lack of finances.
There's no doubt that the A-League, like all football, is a business these days. However, what the Phoenix offer the football and general community here in Wellington has far more value.
I think if the Knicks were to go, it would be devastating for football in this country. The young fans that come and watch us every week and are playing every weekend for their club teams and schools, that we're role models to them.
It'd be disastrous. It's not just for the city, it would be disastrous for football in the country because there's no channel for young players coming through.
For us to qualify for the 2018 World Cup, it's going to be a tough job as it is. If the Phoenix were to fold, I can tell you now there's 0% chance we're going to be making that World Cup.
The reason why I wanted to become a professional was to build a pathway for New Zealanders, for young New Zealanders, and it would be awful to see it ripped from underneath us.
Well, a pretty cool little things happened here at half-time. They've actually just given away a few prizes to their millionth fan who's walked in through these gates. And if you think just about those past few New Zealand clubs who were failing to even get crowds into the four figures, it really is impressive that they've been able to get 1 million fans in a decade.
The Save the Knicks campaign, it really was embraced by not just the Yellow Fever and the Knicks, but fans all around the country. Tell me, do you have any memories of that and how did that feel?
I went on record and said it's probably the best thing that's happened to the club, this licence saga, because it's really brought everyone together. Even on the weekend, there was Brisbane Roar supporters that had Save the Knicks scarves around their necks.
It was really good to see and really heartening and hopefully a message to the FFA.
Just for everyone else to give so much support is really good.
Why do you think they're giving so much support?
I think it's just so important for this club to be in this country. It's hard enough for us as football fans in a rugby country. This football club, it's really all we have.
I think what it showed the FFA was that there are business decisions that have to be made, but then there is a community as well, and you have to listen to them.
Now, Wellington Phoenix, like all clubs, have got a supporters group. What's your name? What are you about?
So we're called the Yellow Fever.
It's very English. There's a lot of expats here in New Zealand, so there's a lot of English influence, I guess. There's no sort of capo or drum, so we just bout out tunes as much as we can.
They've inspired me every week to go out and play against all the other teams, and next year when I hang the boots up, maybe I'll be up there as well.
Yeah. However, there's perhaps no better story to show the strength of the Knicks community than that of the Retro Ricky Scholarship.
They came to us and they said, well, we think there's some good kids out there, how can we be part of it?
So back in about 2008, there weren't that many development pathways in the country for youngsters, which was really unfortunate because we had a professional club for the first time, but we were signing older guys from around the world and that kind of thing.
And we said, well, look, you work out a way to fund them, bring them down to Wellington, and we'll chuck them in a few training sessions, see how they go.
So we knew this guy called Marco Rojas. We paid for him to come down to Wellington.
But, where did you get the money from?
T-shirt sales, sponsorship on the website, things like that. We really had to scrape it together because supporters groups don't have a lot of money.
The funny thing about Marco, he was playing the next level down, so he wasn't even playing at the highest tier of New Zealand football at that stage.
It was just unbelievable watching him play.
So the Knicks signed him?
Yeah, the Knicks signed him. He did well, he was young, he was little.
He got his chance. I can remember a game at Westpac, and Marco Rojas, a 17, 18-year-old, just absolutely tore up Melbourne Victory. Won the game 2-0. It was the first time we'd beaten Melbourne Victory at home.
To his credit, he's gone on to not just the Wellington Phoenix, but Melbourne Victory, and now he's playing, overseas. And
he won the Johnny Warren medal, best player of the league, and then he got bought by Stuttgart in the Bundesliga. You helped the kid go from, the suburban leagues of New Zealand to the Bundesliga. If that's not a supporters group doing what supporters are meant to do, I don't know what is.
We're working through some issues with Wellington Phoenix. They were looking for a 10-year licence. We were looking for them to be making a greater contribution to the A-League, but we're hopeful that we'll come out with a win-win out of that issue, which will give them the opportunity, should they meet certain hurdles, to stay in for 10 years' time.
You can really see why the Save the Knicks campaign has gone so international. Whilst yes, there are somewhat valid arguments against the club, they really don't stack up against getting rid of an institution that has become a pillar of the football community, not just in the city, but the whole country and confederation. The FFA as Australians can surely sympathise with what it's like and how hard it is to be a football fan here in New Zealand. So surely to get rid of everything they've built, from the Yellow Fever to the Retro Rookie Scholarship, it just doesn't make sense, and there really is only one logical conclusion. For the good of the game and the good of the A-League, save the Knicks. That's all from us here at Wellington. Hopefully next time we come here, there's still a professional football club, and hopefully you've subscribed to Copper 90, where you can see stories like this all around the world.